Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Shannon, welcome to the show.
Sam, thanks for having me.
Man, it's a pleasure to have you on. You've obviously got a deep bench of experience. I think we call that wisdom. Things you've done right, things you've done wrong, that you've learned over the years, and you've built several very successful companies. And since we've got such a short time, I'd love to just love to hear kind of where you started, where you are now, and really how you got there and lessons you learned along the way.
Well, Sam, it's funny. My parents are both in real estate. My dad was the son of a mechanic. He got his general contractor's license in California. My mom was a real estate agent. They moved to Idaho 40 years ago. And I always saw real estate happening at the dinner table. I watched my parents buy and sell and hold and fix and flip. I mean, I remember when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad at 22 years old, I realized that was my life. I lived that out. So when I started my own personal journey in real estate, it was fairly easy for me to see that. But the one thing that I looked at was, how do I go from where they are now to where I can go from there? And there's so much that you can learn from those that came before you, but there's so much that you can learn from those that you're working with now. And, so one of the things that I saw growing up was how to do real estate things, but I also saw how being a student of real estate, being a person that has mentors, being a person that is, that studies the tax code, that meets with your accountants, not on, March 15th, trying to save money on April 15th. It's about meeting with them in November to create any last minute changes that you need to do to implement the plan, and then meeting again in May and looking at what you can improve on last year so that you're putting those things in place so that nothing is surprising.
Right.
And it's funny how when I looked at where I started and where I came from with my parents, I was so grateful for the education I got. Albeit when I was younger, I didn't appreciate working Saturdays and Sundays on the job sites. I realized as I got older that was an invaluable education, but there was holes in it,
right?
And one of the things that I learned was that, those holes can be filled by you, or those holes can be filled by others. Those holes can be filled by mentors. Those holes can be filled by hiring people that do what you don't. All of those lessons that I've learned are, ways that you can improve on what you came from, what your heritage brought you, or what you're learning today, because what your heritage brought you was nothing. And now you're wanting something.
That's interesting. So you at 22, you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, obviously grew up with it around the kitchen table. What was your next step?
I'd already done my first flip when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad when it first came out. And I honestly struggled to understand, what was he selling? What's different than what I do? I mean, why is this such a revolutionary book? Right.
Right.
And so I began to just improve on that. And what I really kind of pulled together, Sam, was that my dad built things.
Right.
And, my dad would look at a piece of ground and he'd come home and, man, Margaret, did you see the Johnsons are selling their property? And my mom would go, well, that's funny, because I got the Smiths over here that would really like a new warehouse. And they'd put the deal together at the dinner table. Right.
Oh, wow.
Then they'd argue over whether or not she was going to get a commission because she was that blood-sucking realtor, right?
Sure.
But that's what I saw, right? And that was my growing up. But what I didn't realize in that was where the cash flow came from, right? And my dad didn't quite get that to the extent that a lot of people are able to syndicate, are able to leverage that. They're able to buy something with the bank's money at 4% or 5%. They're able to maximize that, and they're able to continue to keep debt, but they're living a cash flow life, right?
Right.
And so I struggled with that balance. But what I began to see was that by adding the value of, I see that piece of dirt, I see you have a need for your business, I can design, build your building. Then I also began to put two and two together, and I said, well, I can design, build a building for myself, and I can rent it out to my tenants, right? And where my dad had built that up, and he had held that, and he still has buildings that he built 25 years ago. And he would do a 1031 and he would sell a building, he would move his money, but it was a slow process. I began to see where if all I did was build the building and filled the building, I had the original value add, right? I could come in and I could say my sticks and stones are $100,000. I put the tenant in there. I could sell the building without the tenant for $125,000 and I make a profit. I could put the tenant in there. Now all of a sudden I'm getting $145,000 or $150,000. Or now I'm at the place in my life where I'm saying, or I can bring investors in and we can keep the building and they can participate with me, but I get paid when the building is done and I get to continue the ride because we created this cash flow machine.
Right.
Right. And so it's been I would love to say that this came to me when I was 22, right? But this has been my lifelong journey of all of the different steps that you can take in the same building on the same piece of land done one time. Right. So that's kind of, that's where you look at it and you can learn and you can improve. And those have been the things that I've learned along the way. The pitfalls, the things that I would do different talking to my 22-year-old self, that list is quite long.
Right. Yeah. And I'd love to dig into that, of course, as well. Talk to us about how, I love the concept there, but how does someone identify those types of opportunities? You just walk out and say, hey, I like that corner. Let's put something on it. Or, there had to be a learning curve there that kind of educated you in that process.
Yeah. And Sam, there is, and my learning curve has taken 25 years.
Sure.
What I tell other people, because I get asked this question a lot, how do I get where you're at, right? Without all the bumps and bruises and, wasting 25 years of my life to get there. How do I get there now? And the thing that I keep coming back to, the thing that I keep telling people is, how does somebody else know that? And how can you get their knowledge into you, right?
Sure.
Mentorship is one of the easiest ways to acquire that knowledge. I've recently run across a couple of people that have said, I will work for you for nothing if you will show me what you do. And their reality is that they will learn more in that year that they're working for me than they could ever pay for. Right. And if I were to have that conversation with my 25-year-old self, I would say, hey, you are going to make this so hard on yourself if you are the only guy that's learning this and implementing this and making all these mistakes yourself when you can go work for somebody else. I know that's not in your DNA. I've never had a job as an adult. Right. My brother holds the record. He's never even had a W-2. He's never,
Wow.
Yeah, we're that kind of family,
Understood.
And we joke that it's probably because we're unhireable.
Right.
What's HR? We don't know.
We don't know.
But the reality is at the end of the day, if you're willing to trade time for money, that's a great place to start, even though nobody wants to wind up there forever.
Right.
But if you're able to work with someone that says, I can show you how to take that corner and put a building on it and do this and do that and do the other and move forward with that process in your life. I can show you how to be, being an LP on a syndication on a value add apartment complex is a great way to ask a lot of questions because you paid an admission fee. Right. And after being an LP several times, then maybe you can be a co-GP. Then once you're a co-GP, maybe you can be a solo GP. Then once you're a solo GP, the sky's the limit. Right. But most people want to get there without doing the work.
Right.
And that's where I learned a lot of my very expensive lessons was by doing that without the mentorship. Now having the conversation with my 25-year-old self, I'm going to say, hey, let's go to work at this company. Let's get in with these guys. You've got the drive. You've got the determination. You know where you want to go. Let's take the shortcut. Let's get their knowledge downloaded into your brain here in a couple of years. We won't starve to death, but we will make a lot more money over time because of the compounding effect of knowledge and money.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely right. And that feels, especially for the go-getters in us, feels it feels horrible. It's hard. It's hard to do.
I had a great call the week before Christmas with a young lady out of LA. And she was a go-getter and she was like, no, but I have this deal. And I'm like, I understand that. I understand that. I am talking to a female version of myself. You have this deal and you will die on that hill and you will put that flag in the top and that will be your deal. And amen, sister, you did it. Right.
Right.
That is great. But in that same time that you did a deal, you could participate in 7 deals, watch 2 of them go sideways, 2 of them go the way they'd planned, and 3 of them go phenomenally well.
Right.
Take that, figure all that out, put that into your brain, and 3 years later, leave that firm much farther ahead than if you'd have done that one deal in that 3-year time period, not only with the knowledge portion of it, but also with the money portion of it, because now you're connected to that network. You're connected to those contacts that have, this is the banking relationship. This guy does it different. I mean, if you've ever seen spreadsheets on how people underwrite stuff, every single person has a different spreadsheet.
Right.
Oh, well, you forgot, what about this and what about that? And, now we've got the COVID underwritten spreadsheets, right? I mean, right. I don't know what that's about. Either you're underwriting it properly or you're not. But so when I look at that, I see where mentorship and being part of other people's deals, being pliable and understanding that could have, and I say this from a personal point of view, and if anybody wants to get a hold of me on social media or whatever, I will gladly give you 5 very expensive examples that are more than any PhD will cost you of things that I did wrong that I don't do anymore, that I could have learned from somebody else for a lot less. Probably gotten paid to learn it.
Right. Do you have time to summarize those 5 things?
Sure. Due diligence, being aware of where your exit is, putting something under contract because it's a great deal, but not knowing where your exit is, not knowing how you're going to accomplish it, hoping because you got a deal in hand and trying to source that yourself. Mm-hmm. That's terminal. You will not, you will pass by more deals than you will get by doing that one. You will waste all of your time sourcing this thing that is a little bit over your head instead of giving it to someone else that can help you learn how to have done that successfully. Right. There's 1. 2 is by trying to do the whole thing yourself and control the whole thing. Your whole focus is right there. And unlike somebody that has placed multiple bets, you have 1 bet.
Right.
So if you can place multiple bets, you have multiple chances to win, but you also have something that you have mitigated some of your downside, right?
Sure.
When you've got all your eggs in one basket and 2008 happens, it's very difficult to recover from that. But if you have multiple things going, not everything's going to fail, right?
Right.
Another thing is hire what you don't do. Right? Don't try and go learn it. Okay. There's no reason. It's awesome to be a self-taught person. Right. But when I did this, I looked at it. I said, I got properties. I got to get a property management education. Right. My parents did it. I can do it. And so a couple of floods later, an overdue tenant that didn't pay, that got me for like 5 months rent, all of these things, I realized that I had spent, I think, about 23% on that year's property management fees. And so I went and hired a property manager. Mm-hmm. Then what I did was I hired the property manager to work for me, and we learned together. We learned what I needed to effectively protect my ROI, right? Or my NOI, because that's all I care about is my NOI.
Sure.
And he learned how to facilitate and help me out as an owner to improve his property management skills and become not a property manager, but an asset manager. Mm-hmm. So I sat here and tried to save money and learn it myself. When I hired a professional, I actually began to profit more on my own deals. One example he brought in cable TV to one of our complexes, 180 unit complexes, and brought in $35 a month per door in revenue.
Wow.
Made our complex worth almost $2.5 million more at the sale. Now, how long could I learn that property management trick? This guy pays for himself in the first year, right? Now I can learn from him. He can learn from me, and we're down the road much farther. I mean, those are the kind of things that I could go on and on and on about lessons I've learned that somebody else could have paid me to learn.
Right.
And now I come to them and I go, hey, excuse me, I have a lot of value. I can do this, but here's the thing. I want to learn that. Mm-hmm. You teach me that, and I will give you, I know the position says $80,000 a year. I'll work for 40, but teach me that in 2 years.
Right.
Now I'm worth 150, or I can go on my own, or even better yet, I can go source the deal and say, hey, you taught me this. This is a value. I'm bringing value. I want to be a partner on this, and I want a small piece of this and put it into your machine. And then you have all of the experience that's coming with all of that the owner is bringing you. It's a really beautiful thing. But in order to do that, the go-getter in us has got to take a back seat. And he's sitting there going, we could have watched a YouTube video and learned this.
That's absolutely right.
Right.
Man.
And it's not. You can't learn it that way.
Right. Man, that's key. That's tough. I remember when 2008 was coming toward us. It was 2006. And my father told me 2008 is around the corner. He didn't say 2008 is around the corner. He said, in my day. And I went, yeah, back in the good old days, right? When you had to ride a wagon to work. And I poo-pooed it, right? Once I walked through that hell on earth that I created, all of a sudden those lessons, I went, oh, is that what he was talking about? Oh, that's why you don't do that. That's what he meant, right? Oh. But until I'd walk through it, and that's the part I'm telling you, don't be so smart. Right.
You need help figuring this out, right?
That's brilliant. And man, it's
unfortunately, it only took me a lifetime to figure it out, Sam.
Right. But it's the slow down to hurry up kind of process that you're referring to.
Well, and if you look at, the easiest way to equate that is take the compounding interest of money, right?
Okay.
And do the same thing with your knowledge base, right? Warren Buffett says that compounding interest is the eighth wonder of the world. Or either he said it or Einstein. They're both really smart guys, and I'd like to be either one of them, right?
Sure.
Well, not Einstein because he's dead. But, but the reality is if you look at compounding, knowledge is the same way. What you know today, you are using to make money today that will help you on that road. But what you're learning today will take you to the next level that will put you that much farther down the road. And it'll put you in such a position that what you did 3 years ago is going to be embarrassing, how small it was, right?
Right.
I mean, my goodness, we were doing that then. Yeah, but that was the block that we built on, that rolled into something bigger. And that's how this really all comes together and really gives you the value that if you slow down, you will be so much farther ahead to have done those things and put that knowledge to work because you're putting it into work earlier in your life and it's got a lot longer to roll out and make you money.
Right. That's awesome. Shannon, let's jump into the final four here. And I think you might have already answered this question, but if you were to give one piece of advice to an aspiring investor, what's that one piece of advice?
The one piece of advice is if you don't understand it, learn. Right. And don't try and learn on your own. I mean, we see so many people out there that are offering courses and they're, hey, we'll do this, we'll do that. And there's a lot to that. Right. Sure. But part of that process is to get to a point where you understand it and you've had some mentorship with that. Right. I mean, you could pay for a course. That's spending money on improvement that's going to compound your knowledge down the road.
Sure.
You can also invest in a deal and know that this is your entry fee. And from there, you're going to gain additional knowledge from the guy or the gal that's the sponsor on this deal. So what I would say to anyone is don't let your head get in the way of doing something,
right? But
always be a student because that what you're learning today, look at the age that you're at and the amount of useful knowledge and time you have. I would have been much better off, like I said, to have spent 3 years or 4 years working for someone else in this industry because I would be millions and millions and millions of dollars ahead, literally, because of what we're doing today versus what we were doing 3, 5, 10, 15 years ago.
That's fascinating. Wow. That's excellent. What is one thing that you are currently doing to stay on top of your game?
Reading. I'm an avid reader. In fact, I was just meeting with my main guy that keeps me on track, and we were going through the reading program for my company, right? And I motivate them to read because I see the value of how much reading does for me.
Right.
You look at anybody that's successful, they read incessantly. whether it's Bill Gates or Warren Buffett or, Tony Robbins, Jim Rohn, John Maxwell. I mean, you run the gamut of people that have achieved the pinnacle of success in their field, and they're avid readers.
Right.
So I continually read because there's always something new to learn, and it keeps me sharp. It also clears my head.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to giving back, what's one way you're making the world a better place?
One of the things that I love to do is I love to educate, because I've been down this road. I've gotten beat up. I've gotten in over my head. I've gotten manhandled by people that were supposed to be helping me. So I love the idea of having a conversation with someone, finding out where they want to go in life, helping them create a plan, because I truly believe that a more intelligent investor creates a better investment market. Mm-hmm. Because when there's not that many idiots out there, there's not many people doing idiotic things.
Right.
And so the more intelligent we can make the investment community, right, the less dumb stuff you see happening. Because how many times, Sam, have you heard this? Well, that's not what they're doing. You should see what they're doing over here. Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. Well, I'm going to go over there. Right. 7 months later, they come back, hat in hand, going, well, that didn't work. That's where the learning comes in.
Right.
So that's what I like to do. I like to give back. I like to help educate. I like to share my story, show the knots on my head as to what happened,
Right. Understood. No. And that I think that's evident just from this podcast alone, that is one of the key ways you give back. So that's fantastic. Shannon, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what is the best way to do that?
Best way to do that is just shannonrobnett.com. I had to make it simple enough that a contractor could remember it, right?
Right.
You can find me on all the social channels, Shannon Ray Robnett on Instagram, Shannon Robnett on all the other places, Facebook, Twitter, all that. But shannonrobnett.com, you can find my schedule. You can click the link. You can schedule a call with me. I'd love to chat with you, get to know you better, see what I can do to help educate, maybe answer some questions.
That's awesome. Shannon, thanks so much for your time today. I certainly appreciate it.
Hey, Sam, I appreciate being on your show. I hope your listeners get something out of this.
Thank you.